On everybody, welcome to youtube.com/DanielGuys412. I am joined here with my friend all the way from California, Clem. What's going on, buddy? Thank you for coming on the channel here for this exclusive interview. I bring you guys the best possible content, and I'm going to shut up and let Chris talk. Chris, what's going on? How are you?
Well, it's all right. We're here at the pre-end of the world, I guess.
Enjoying
coronavirus. Yes. Yeah, I don't know about enjoying it, but it's existing.
Yes, these are the times to be alive. My God, it's craziness. It's madness. Well, I talked to Chris. I'm like, you know what? We got nothing better to do, right? We're quarantining ourselves. Social distancing, washing our hands, making sure we're all cleansed, and free from this, one terrible virus. So, what a better time to do an interview? So, we got a bunch of questions here to go through. But Chris, before we get into the questions, why don't you tell the audience who's unfamiliar with you a little bit about yourself?
I have a question for you. Why are you wearing a Vegas Golden Knights shirt? Mr. Pittsburgh Penguins super fan?
It's Marc-Andre Fleury, so I think I have a valid excuse.
Okay, that's your favorite player?
One of my favorite. I love Fleury. Love Flower. That's the only... I was in Vegas, so I had to get something. So
no, that's fine. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I knew you would say something about it, but go ahead.
Well, it's just I don't own any Chicago Bulls gear or anything like that. So
okay. So
just Cavs stuff.
I figured Cavs. But Chris, tell us about a little bit. Like I said, who you are, what you do, big comedian. You're a comedian. Funny guy.
I'm out here in California right now, living under a shelter and home order. So I'm just like everybody else, stuck inside. I guess comedian and trying to be a writer, but everything's pretty much on pause right now. You can't really go out and perform. You can't really do anything. So at this point in time, I think we're all basically in the same boat.
Unfortunately, yes. We'll talk about, what's going on in the world and whatnot if you want to, but it's really about you, like I said. So I got 10 questions lined up here, the best 10 questions that I could come up with. So question number 1, what made you want to pursue a career in comedy? Where did it all begin? What was your, did you have an epiphany moment, or was it just from the beginning you're like, man, this is really what I wanted to do? Describe that process.
That's kind of like a very... not shallow in terms of superficial, but a shallow question in terms of you could skim over that surface for a really long time. There's not necessarily a way to deep dive into it. So I guess I will just start with, there's a movie called Comedian that came out in 2001. It's about Jerry Seinfeld returning to do stand-up for the first time after the Seinfeld TV show ended. He's trying to develop a new act. He did one last special where he said, I'm telling these jokes for the last time. That's the name of it. And all those jokes he got rid of. So the movie is about him getting back into stand-up and writing new jokes. And it also follows an up-and-comer at the time, Orny Adams. Anyways, the movie's great. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It really has nothing to do with me getting into comedy, but there is one anecdote that makes perfect sense in the context of the movie and most people that do comedy. So they're all hanging out and they're like, what made you decide to do comedy? And he's like, well, I didn't decide to do comedy. I mean, growing up, we're all funny. He's like, all your friends are the funniest people right? And the other guy's Colin Quinn. He's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah. So everybody is really funny and you always have a great time with your friends and funny. And then one by one, they just decide to stop being funny. And he's like, I just decided I wasn't going to stop being funny and just keep doing it. And that's pretty much the way I look at it. It's like me and my friends growing up and all that, we all would have a great time laughing. Everybody's making fun of each other and joking around and stuff. And then one by one, it's just they're like, well, this is over and to go do something else. And I was like, why does this have to be over?
Okay. Good answer. Growing up, were there any comedians that you really you gravitated towards? What's your quote unquote favorites? Some that really you could be look back on and be like, man, this guy really, yeah. Or girl.
No, I don't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, just in the process of growing up and, developing your material, any inspirations that you take from any comedians,
All right. Well, this is going to get really in depth. I feel bad. I watched some of your other interviews, but I feel like this one's supposed to be funny for some reason, and it's going to be. When it comes to talking about stuff, I'm going to be very serious because I give things a lot of thought. So, a lot of people question like, what goes into your thought process, like what shaped you as a comic, as opposed to just like, who's your favorite? So I got to answer this in like basically 3 different ways. Okay. So growing up, I always watched a bunch of different comedy shows and stuff, but I wasn't necessarily the biggest stand-up comedy fan. I was definitely like huge into like old Saturday Night Live episodes and watching Mystery Science Theater and Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And when I was younger than that, Big Chuck and Little John, which was local TV. And I just loved comedy. But those were all like sketch or other kinds of comedy or animation or movie, making fun of movies and stuff. So I'll get into that later. But when it comes to actually like a specific stand-up, the 2 that like made me like stand-up were Chris Rock's Bigger and Blacker, which me and my friend Phil watched in middle school on scrambled cable TV because it was like a pay-per-view thing. Okay. But if you put it on channel, I think at the time was like 67, it would just be a scrambled image, but the sound worked perfectly. So you could hear everything he was saying still. So like all his bits, like the bits about gun control where he was like, they need to, instead of banning guns, what they need to do is make each bullet be $100,000. Be like, man, I would love to kill you, but I got to put some bullets on layaway first. Oh, that's funny. So like, that was when I was like, oh man, this dude's like the funniest guy ever. Mm-hmm. And then this other movie we used to watch in middle school all the time was called Meet Wally Sparks, which was a Rodney Dangerfield movie. It's actually terrible. It's not like a good movie. So if you're listening to this, don't like go watch it and expect it to be great. But like one of the funniest parts of the movie is there's a statue that for some reason has an erect penis on it, and it gets broken off and he puts it into his pocket because he doesn't want anybody to know he broke the statue. So then he's going around a dance party with this huge, looks like a huge boner the whole time. Like it's that kind of level of humor. So if you're in your 12-year-old mindset, it's hilarious, but it's not a well-made movie. No. There's a scene you would like, Dan. He's like a talk show host. He's like a Jerry Springer type character. Rodney Dangerfield's character, Wally Sparks. And he does a live interview with sumo wrestlers versus pro wrestlers. Who's tougher? So, you might enjoy it. I don't know about the people listening. It's pretty rough, but yeah.
There are a couple there. As far as diving, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, that's fine. I wasn't done yet.
Keep going. You're good.
No, I was just gonna say. And after that, I really liked Rodney Dangerfield. Okay. So I watched his old stand-up from the 70s, and it's kind of like cheesy, but it was still really funny. Just like the way he would hit his line and like bug his eyes out and stuff like that. Like. The jokes are like old and played out, but just the way he talked was so funny, which was also like another thing like, oh, if I read this joke, it wouldn't make me laugh. But watching this guy do it and the way he says it, and he's like, oh, and like bugs his eyes out and makes his little hand motions, like it was hilarious. And then after that, I also loved Norm Macdonald on Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update. So I checked out his stand up. So those are probably like the 3 that I enjoyed the most growing up.
Okay. Nice. Good picks. Could I throw a couple names out at you? What about like a Robin Williams? What'd you think of him? Oh my goodness.
When I first started doing stand-up, I would go, this is like say how long ago this was, I would go to Blockbuster and rent like every stand-up DVD that they had at the time. And one of those was Robin Williams live on live on Broadway or whatever. And have you seen this one?
No, but I could only imagine.
I'm sure it's on some streaming service, but something. He's got his stool. Normally they have like a glass of water or a bottle of water on the stool, and he's got like 12 bottles of water, and he goes through all of them throughout the entire thing.
Wow. And
he's just screaming. And I mean, it is pretty funny. But he's just like, no. Oh my God. Like, then he's just like pounding the water and going down.
Like the man was just so full of energy and just, man, it's a shame how it ended. I mean, that's unfortunate, but Guy was just, his timing was unbelievable. One of the best. What about Eddie Murphy? I've seen some of his stuff. Oh my goodness, I was cracking up. I could just in the heyday in the '80s, SNL. I mean, he was on another level.
Eddie Murphy is like, even for people younger like you or me or anybody under like, I guess you'd have to be in your 40s to be around for his heyday. That's still one of the first specials I think a lot of people saw was Delirious, the one that was a movie. Like, I remember it would be on TV late at night as a kid and stuff. So, I mean, Eddie Murphy, as much as his stuff is like, some of it is aged really badly.
Yeah.
Like, he really does not like gay people. And, or at least his material was very, if somebody's like, what does homophobic mean? I'd just be like, watch this 10-minute chunk from Delirious and you will understand. But, that's like what a lot of people's first experience with stand-up was. I know it was probably mine when I was like 6, was seeing it like the edited version, but seeing it on TV at like 11 o'clock at night.
Here's another name. I don't know. This guy, so funny. Don Rickles.
Don Rickles. You like insult comedy?
Oh my god. I was watching when he was on the Tonight Show with him and Sinatra and Carson. My god, was he cracking me up. I just love how he makes fun of everybody. Like, he doesn't exclude. He's like, I'm going to make fun of you, and you. And I'm like, that's it. I feel like nowadays we're so, in a way, kind of going off on a little tangent here, protected. And do you find that tough? Actually, that's a good question here. Like, making the jokes, coming, oh, am I going to offend this person or that person? Like, watch your boundary. Like, does that ever come into play when you're crafting your material? You know what I mean? Like,
yes and no. First, I want to say Don Rickles is awesome because he was a character in Jack Kirby's Fourth World in the 70s. So you can find comics with Don Rickles in them. It's amazing. And if you have any interest in comics, Jack Kirby's Fourth World from the early 70s DC Comics is like, it's the pinnacle of what makes comics crazy and good. But Don Rickles, yeah, he's an insult comic. He's pick on everybody and all that. But me personally, do I find like I have to censor myself? There's like a yes and no. No, one, people could tell your intention. So a lot of people who get in trouble for being offensive comics, it's not because their joke is necessarily offensive, but it's almost like people are empathetic. And I'm not saying like in terms of ESP or telepathy, but people are empathetic enough to sense like people's intentions. So if you have a good intention and you're touching on an edgy subject, it usually comes through, even if it's something that you would think could be offensive. But then there's other people who have stuff that's not as offensive, and you could tell that it's not coming from like a place of love. Yeah. So that comes across harsher. Me personally, the only stuff I try that I've ever self-censored about is something like people who are in a very unsafe situation. Like I used to have a joke about, it wasn't even making fun of them, but I had a joke about somebody who was referencing somebody being potentially trans. And that is one I won't do anymore, because as I've gotten older, I'm like, if you look at the statistics of people who are trans and how often they're either attacked or commit suicide or have some sort of violent act happen to them, it's clear that our society as a whole is contributing to whatever's devaluing their lives. And frankly, the joke wasn't good enough for me to go there. And I wasn't even making fun of them, but somebody could hear that and be like, oh yeah, they're gross or weird. And even though that's not what the joke is, somebody might still think that. So I would rather avoid that, because I don't want to be contributing to that negative aspect of society. But as opposed to jokes that are just like, ooh, somebody's feelings got hurt, that's fair game all day. And that's pointless to try to edit yourself up there, because again, unless you have a bad intention, usually if the joke's good enough, it's fine. I just don't want to be, I know a lot of people say punching up versus punching down, and I think it's a lot more complex than that. But simply speaking, there's definitely groups that are under fire all the time. Like right now, with the way things are, like I heard from somebody earlier this week that an Asian kid at her kid's high school got beat up because of the coronavirus. And it's like, you know, whatever jokes might fly normally at this point in time, you're contributing to a negative on the whole of society. So if there was a joke that referenced like being Chinese in any way, I probably wouldn't do it right now. Now, if it was one that wasn't actually like propagating something negative, in like a year or two, you could go back to it. But in general, you know, it's just stuff like that. Don't censor yourself, but don't be an idiot either, I guess is my only philosophy.
Okay, that's good points.
Some people do get too oversensitive, and there are times where people say one thing and they jump down them. And most people, when they say something that hurts somebody, you know, either A, I got plenty of jokes that are supposed to hurt somebody's feelings, or B, they don't know what they're saying, how it affects somebody who's marginalized. So if you actually tell them like this is bad for this reason, you could do a cost benefit analysis in your head and say, is this joke funny enough to be worth this potential? But by just saying like this person's canceled or whatever, you don't learn anything from it.
Wow.
I hope I
That's great.
Explained my point good enough there.
No, you did. And one more thing I just wanted to touch base on comics here that you may like, or just in general. I don't know if this would count as a comic, but Triumph, the insult comic dog. As soon as you said it, do you like Triumph? Are you a fan?
Do I like Triumph? Oh my God, I love Triumph.
Oh my goodness, that guy.
He is good for me to poop on.
Oh my God! Well, he shits on everybody. I mean, it's great. I mean, if you've never seen Triumph, you got to see him. And he started on Conan, and I love Conan. I mean, we'll talk about Conan as well if you want to. But I don't know what's going to happen here. But anything can happen here during an interview, folks. But Triumph, he is quite the character if you've seen his material. But like I said, there's a lot of ground here that I do hope to cover here. But let me just... Oh, wait a minute. What's going on here, folks? Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to get my Best of Triumph DVD, but
I thought you actually had the pup. You were going to come back with the pup.
No,
I was hoping.
I wish. No,
it's a big fan.
This room's been changed, and there's a couch that's blocking my old DVD, so I can't get to it. So I'm wasting too much time.
Some of the funniest stuff I think I've seen with Triumph. You've seen the skits where he's in Times Square with all the mascots and the Star Wars wedding, or they're like the fan convention for the Phenom. Oh my God, it's some of the best stuff out there.
This is what I was getting to on the very first question you asked when you were talking about influences, and then you moved on to what stand-ups I liked.
Well,
I was going to tell you my 5 biggest comedic influences, and one of them was it's talking about Trump.
Let's keep going. That's okay.
We could go back to it when we're done with this.
Sure.
Let me host your show for you.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm like, go back. No, I love Triumph. I've seen all of them, but I was just going to say Conan is one of like the 5 biggest things that Late Night with Conan O'Brien is one of the 5 biggest influences in my sense of humor.
Well, I'm a Conan Mark, so seriously, I love that guy and everything that happened with him and Jay Leno, guys, the Tonight Show, that whole debacle, and they screwed him. I mean, I could go off on a tangent about that, but I think it worked out for Conan. I mean, he's got his shows still, and and he's still going strong. Love that guy.
I watched the Tonight Show when he hosted it every episode, but nothing was as good as like the late 90s, early 2000s late night 12:30 show. That was it.
The best growing up. Yeah. I mean,
when I had school off and I could stay up that late, oh man. Dream come true.
Do you think it has something to do with he could get away with more at 12:30 versus an 11:30 slot? I mean, doesn't that have to kind of have to tone down for that audience? That kind of
they definitely made it more less subversive, more mainstream to its detriment, which the TBS show I didn't think did, but they were on cable, so I guess
it's good, but nothing to me will beat the Late Night. Like that show. I mean, it was something else. But
the writer's staff was a lineup of destroyers too. Like Robert Smigel is so funny.
Oh, really? Because I didn't even know. Yeah,
that's the guy who does Triumph the Insult Comic.
Oh, he's the guy. Okay. That's the guy.
Yeah, he was a writer on there for a while, and he would be the guy doing the clutch cargo things where they'd have their face and just the mouth would move. Yeah,
they had Arnold.
Like Bill Clinton. Yeah. I still remember there was one where Mike Tyson was talking about eating Conan's kids. He's like, "I'm going to eat your kids."
Well, what about in the year
Oh yeah.
That was my favorite. I love that. So stupid, but Conan made it work. Just his expressions and the way like he make things so awkward. I love that guy. Like his just man, he gets it. You know,
Yeah.
he seems like a cool
Giant
dude.
fan of the show.
You know,
That was definitely one of the biggest influences of my comedic sensibilities. 100%.
okay,
Uh
nice.
huh.
Actually, another question here off the top of my head: have you ever went to any of these tapings? Because that's something I've never done. Any late night, or one of these big, Tonight Show, David
We
Letterman, any of the.
we went to the late night with Jimmy Fallon
Oh, you
one
went
a
to Jimmy Fallon?
long time ago, and it wasn't even like a taping; it was like
Oh,
the rehearsal.
oh, okay. I didn't know
Um,
if or
and
SNL or
it was
something.
fine. No, I'd love to go. I've known people that have worked there, but nobody that I'm close enough with that could just be like invite me.
Okay, I didn't know out in California before everything went to hell in a handbasket. Any of those shows or you get a chance? Because I know there's a lot filmed out there, and you're in the hub of all that.
Not like a talk show. I have not
No.
been to.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Let's then move on to the next question here. As far as your material, like, what's the process that goes into, like, how do you come? Is it just like describe that process? I'm probably not phrasing this right. Like, what does it take to develop a show? Like, how long does the process take from start to finish? Let's start with that first. It's like you're preparing. You know you got a show coming up. What's your method to the madness?
At this point in time, I got enough stuff that it wouldn't really
There's not.
like. Are you
Okay.
saying like okay?
Well,
Let me answer this as a hypothetical.
sure.
Like overseas in Europe, they will come up with like a new show, like an hour's worth of comedy every year, a couple years or whatever, and they construct it as an entire show.
Okay.
Now, something like that is much different than America, where most actual like road comics, like there's been guys I've opened for in like really small places or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people on the road full time are guys who are like older, probably like 40, late 40s, 50s, and they've been doing those. A lot of them, probably too many, have been doing the same act for like 20 years. And so they don't change anything. Maybe they'll do a little different crowd work at the beginning or whatever. But in terms of me, I am not very productive. Like I was, it takes me a while to come up with new stuff, mostly because I'm not good. I'm not like a good comic in terms of like actually being like productive and sitting down. Like I know people who sit down every day and they write and they can get some stuff like that. I'm much more of a person who just talk and I'll listen like, oh, that worked, and then listen to it and then write it down and then I do it again.
Okay.
So I don't really have a process. I'm sorry if that's a disappointing answer to your question.
Whatever works
But
for you. Just curious to see like what all it takes till you eventually get up there on the stage and it's like it's showtime, lights are on, let's go.
so let me see. So like, all right, this is a bad example. I'm trying to find like if I wrote out a set list, I could show you. Okay, so this is my book that I've used for roasts. That actually requires a lot more work because when you do a roast, you got to actually write jokes for the person or a bunch of people you're doing.
Okay.
But I don't know, man. I don't know if I have one here. Okay, so like this is old.
Yeah.
This is an old book. This is probably 3 or 4 years old. So okay, this was for when I was like the notes I have. Am I in video on?
Yeah, we
this
can
whole
all
thing?
see it. Yeah, sure. Show the audience. We can see
Okay,
that.
so this is my notes from. I want to say, oh wow, okay, this is really old. This is January 2014
Wow.
when I hosting at the Cleveland Improv.
Hey.
So at most like comedy clubs, you'll have 3 spots. You got the headliner who usually do 45 minutes to an hour. You got the feature who does 20 to 30 minutes. And then you got a host who does 10 to 15 minutes and then brings up the other acts. Now at like showcase clubs in the big city, like if you're at the New York and the Comedy Cellar, the host would be like the main guy and they do like 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And then they'd bring up everybody because there's no like headliner and they just keep going. Or at a place like the Comedy Store out here, something like that, like a showcase club with lots of like, you'd go to one of those shows, you could see like every person on the act is somebody you would recognize from TV or whatever. So like this is from 6 years ago. This was my set at the Cleveland Improv. So like the first show here,
should be able. Yeah, we can see that. Yep. There we go. That's good.
Okay,
yep.
So this is what I planned on doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the early show, and then this is what I did do on the late show, and then this is what I wrote next to it. What I thought of how each joke went over.
Okay.
So it's like, millionaire marriage, good. Daytime TV, poor.
Yep.
High school, great. Batman, good. Second show, bad. So I would take all the jokes that I had written, and I would come up with what I thought would work at that certain location. Because at smaller places, I've done much longer sets. Like the small club in Akron, I've headlined. So no, this was not since then, but like, so at this, I'm doing 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I need to do my 10, 15 best minutes because it's already going to be hard to get them on my side. But if I can be done and they're laughing and good, that means I did what I was supposed to do. So that's basically like really a pure peek inside my mind here is how I would write out the sets and then listen back to them and go over them. So in terms of that, so this was later in the year, the next time I was there at the Cleveland Improv. This was like a year later. And a lot of the jokes are the same, but not all of them. So it's more like what worked last time, what worked this time, and things like that. And a lot of places, like it's easy. When I was living in Ohio, I knew the crowd that would be at the Cleveland Improv. Even if I went back there now, I would know the crowd that would be at the Cleveland Improv. I would know the crowd that would be at the Funny Stop in Akron. There'd be different things and stuff like that. So it'd be easier to construct the entire thing. Now, in terms of like a show, like at a festival or something like that, or just like an audition, I would have 5 minutes to 7 minutes of my very best stuff, and it was constructed in a way that I knew would work. So basically, like this 5 minutes will do good no matter where I am because it's the best 5 minutes I can put together in that interval. So for something like that, it's completely different. But the only places I've ever headlined at are places where it's not a lot of pressure because they're either in a small town or it's like a bar show. You know what I mean? So there's really no pressure. So when I would construct something like that, it would just be like first 10 minutes, this stuff I know will work. Then I can do what I want. This stuff will work if I lose them. And then I do what I want. So I'm probably, like I said, I'm not like a good, hardworking comic. There's a lot of people who could talk to you about craft and construction of sets. I'm not necessarily that person because I like to riff and improvise a lot. And I'm also a naturally lazy person. So I'm not going to necessarily be working for weeks and weeks for one show. But there are people that do, and they're probably much more successful than me. So that is a lesson you could take from that.
Very nice. Very nice answer. Now, just a question that, off the top of my head here, I don't know if I've ever asked you this. Have you ever done any stand-up in Pittsburgh, my hometown? You knew I had to throw a Pittsburgh question in there.
Yes, I have.
How was that? First, where was it at? Because I might know where that was at. If you remember which location, venue?
Not that long ago, a couple of years ago now, we did our own show at the Arcade Theater downtown, which normally does improv shows, but we did a stand-up show there.
Nice. How did that go? Did you use the benefit that you're from Cleveland, or did you bring that up? Because, the big Pittsburgh-Cleveland thing?
Not really. Nah. It wasn't as big as you think because all the people there are more like the people, if it was, I don't even know, they still have a Pittsburgh Improv?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Like at a place like that, those would be the people that would be like more into that kind of stuff. The people that are downtown in like the arts district are going to be different than that. I think they're more of like, it's like the difference between like a mainstream crowd and like an indie crowd. Yes. Like it's not like hipsters or whatever, but they're people who aren't going to want like local references and they're going to want something more, avant-garde is not the correct term, but they want something more esoteric, I think.
good work. Yeah, I haven't heard that word in a while. But in terms of crowds, what is your favorite place, favorite city? Would it be Cleveland? Is that your favorite place to perform? Because I know you've been places. Like, do you have a preference?
I mean, yeah, anywhere Northeast Ohio is great because if you do bad, you can just pull out local references out your ass because that's where I was from. So that gives you a leg up. Like, oh, this is not going good. All right, Brown's joke about whatever. There you go.
Okay. Good answers. And I got the questions coming up here. So let's see here. Do you have a common joke, like your most, the one that you always go to? Anything? Because I know you mentioned you don't really, do you? No?
What?
Common joke that you tell, like your go to? I don't know if that's.
I mean, yeah, that's what I was just saying. Like, if I had an audition, I have 5 minutes that I would go to, even though it's really old at this point. I don't have something more constructed that would be better than it. So yeah, I definitely have at this point in time, it's probably the exact same as it would have been 5 years ago. But if I had to do 5 minutes, it's going to be this joke about my mom. Well, actually, I got to change it now that I've lost so much weight. But this joke about my mom, a joke about having sleep apnea, that stuff would be immediately in there. But yeah, now that I'm under 227, it's probably time to switch the sleep apnea jokes out.
Okay.
I mean, I still have it, but I can't just say I have it because I'm fat. So.
So, kind of switching gears here, which I hate that phrase. I don't know why I said it. I swear, did me or Michael Cole say that? Switching gears. I'm like, oh, that sounds so corny. I'm turning into Michael Cole.
Vintage Dan Giza.
Oh, my. It is thunderous. He is so bad. But I can't blame him because he has a maniac in his ear.
I can't watch WWE anymore after Wednesday. After Wednesday's AEW, I can't watch WWE. It's over.
It's on. Is it on right now? Oh, 2 minutes. I just got Rob Gronkowski's coming, folks. By the time this video is uploaded, he's hosting WrestleMania. Are you excited for WrestleMania? I don't really want to talk about WrestleMania because to me, it's like they took the little neuralizer and it's gone. There's no more WrestleMania. It doesn't exist. I'm still pissed about it.
I don't want to distract you from whatever question you're about to ask.
Well, it was going to be about, I did want to ask you about going on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you won $100,000. That's awesome. How did that happen?
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome.
How did it happen? Okay, February 2009, I got laid off from this job I got. It was the first job I got as my first adult job, aka not working as a deli guy in a grocery store. And I was unemployed. So it was the next year. What year was that been? 2010. I was still unemployed. Yep. We had a major recession, in case your listeners don't remember that. We're about to have another one, but that's another story. This one's probably going to be an actual depression, but that's okay. Yeah. So I had no job or anything, and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was trying to convince me to go. They had an open audition because they were syndicated, so they would go to different cities every year to have open auditions to try to entice people to watch, people might be on the show or whatever. So they had this big audition at Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, in the Flats, and I wasn't going to go because I thought it was stupid. But my girlfriend kept trying to get me to go. She was like, "Oh, you got to go. I know you'd get on. You got to go. You got to go." So I was like, all right. I didn't sleep at all the night before because at that point I was going to bed at 6 a.m, waking up at 2:30. And I was like, all right, let's go. I took me, my brother, and this comedian friend of mine at the time downtown. We parked and went to the Nautica. Yeah, it was the Nautica Pavilion. And so they had everybody line up. And this one guy I used to work with at my old job who also did comedy for a minute was there. And he was telling me how hard it was and how his one friend is a genius and it was the hardest test he ever took. And there's don't even expect to get on. So I was like, whatever. I had no hopes up or anything. So then there was probably, I would say maybe 1,000 people, maybe 700 people waiting. And they would bring you in by groups of like 200 to take the test. So they went up there and they would have you wait and take like a paper test, and then they would grade them. And based on who passed the test, they would invite you to come back for an interview. So we were there, and it was pretty funny because they're like, oh, does anybody want to entertain us? No. And people are like, sure, while we're waiting, we'll tell a joke. And this guy told the worst joke I think I heard in my entire life. He went up there and he's like, okay, I have a joke for everyone. Oh, God. The guy was driving his car and his car ran out of gas, and he was standing there getting sad when all of a sudden a bee came by and said, don't worry, buddy, we'll fill up your car. And all of a sudden, a bunch of bees went in the gas tank, and they came out, and sure enough, it was full. And he said, how did you guys get my car full of gas? And the bee said, BP.
Wow. That's pretty bad. Good product placement, though.
So then this jaded comedian friend of mine said, he went up there and said, my dick is like the evening news. Every time a black woman's on it, she's either crying or screaming.
That's a good one.
And people went ballistic.
Oh, my God.
And I was me and my brother were trying so hard not to laugh because of how awkward it was, because it was like silent, and then people were like, boo, like, get out of here and stuff, which made it so funny.
Oh, man.
So the reaction was great. So anyways, you take this test, and when people ask me what it was like, it's like a combination between like an SAT and like pop culture trivia, like Trivial Pursuit. Okay. So there'd be like questions about geography and math, and then there'd also be questions mixed in about the Academy Awards and stuff like that. So they grade it. We're all sitting there. Actually, I might have gotten this story wrong. I'm pretty sure we took the test, and then we were trying to kill time while they were grading it. And that's when everybody was telling their jokes and stuff. But they read out, each paper had at the top a number like saying what it was. So it was like 104, 105, whatever. And they were reading them out, and they read off 104, and I didn't even know it was me. And my brother is like, because I was so tired at the point, I'd been up like 27 hours. My brother was just like hitting me like, that's you. So I went up there, and like our group, there was only like 13 people that passed the test out of like the 250. It was probably total, I'd say there was like 700 to 1,000 roughly. And probably like, I think I counted, it was 74 that passed it, because we were all there later at the same time for the interviews. So then we had like 4 hours to kill while they tested everybody else. And I had my like paper to come back. And we did all that. We actually went down to they used to have auditions for the Cleveland Improv to get on their open mic night back in the day. And you would have to go down there in front of the manager, the general manager at the time, and you would do your set to nobody, and he'd like give you notes, and then if you were good enough, he'd put you on the open mic, and if not, you'd have to keep coming back. So we went to that. That was fun. Because the guy who told the joke about the news was legally blind, so the guy threw a pen at him, and it hit him right in the side of the head during the auditions. Too much. So, and I was like punchy because I was so tired. So it was the funniest thing I think I saw in my life. I was like drunk because I was so tired, even though I was 100% sober. So we go to this test afterwards. I felt so bad because my brother and my friend neither passed, but they had to stay the whole time because I'm the one that drove. So they were just wasting all this time up there, but they couldn't go in the main area because they wouldn't let them. Anyways, you'd meet with the producer, they'd interview you. And I found out that like certain people were getting a little yellow slip of paper to go do a second interview. And only very few people were getting it. And that's why I knew, like, oh, I have to get a yellow slip. I went through all this. I got to get on the show. So I need to get a yellow slip. And this one lady melted down because she was at the thing and she's like, that's it. And they're like, all right, that's it. We'll let you know if we pick you. And she's like, no, I know you're not going to pick me because I don't have a yellow slip. I need you to give me a yellow slip. And I was like, all right, I got to get this yellow paper no matter what. And so I was like, all right, use all my energy and be like awake and energetic and like talk to them like, oh, yeah. And not like, so I had to like every ounce of willpower to get my cells flowing again to try to put on an act. And I got my yellow slip. Nice. So then I went into this interview area and she was telling me what other people were like, how they were doing their interviews and stuff. And she's like, so you got to do something really big. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do this like a wrestling promo. And I like stared right at the camera and I was like, listen up, all you jabronis in New York down at the ABC studios on West 67th Street. You're going to put me on that show because I need this money. And anyways, it was stuff like that. Nice. So, then a couple of weeks later, I got a card that said I was in their contestant pool, and I thought that was it. And then like 5 days after that, they called me, and they're like, oh, we need you to come this day. Wow. And I went down there to film it in the end of September, and it aired in November.
And you won $100,000.
Yep.
Nice. Is the full episode out there? Can we find? I've seen the clips, but is it? Do you have it? I'm assuming you have. They gave you a copy. Do they give you a copy when you're on the show?
No, they don't give you a copy.
They'll give you nothing.
My friend Tim
recorded it
and uploaded it, and I have it saved on my computer, so I could send it to you, but it's not out there.
Okay, because I've seen. I know. Where did I see the highlight? I know you had it. Maybe it was on Facebook or something.
They made a commercial, and that was on their Facebook page for. It still is if you search for it.
That'd be fun to watch. I definitely, if you could send me a cut. Like I said, I need stuff to watch. I would gladly watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
All right, I'll send you the clip. I think I have it on my Google Drive.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Then I'll just, after we're done with this, I'll just get your email you want me to send it to. I'll double check though.
But since I haven't watched, did you use I'm assuming you used all the lifelines. Was it 50-50 phone a friend? Did they change it? Because I know that it.
There's no phone a friend. It was 50-50 and 2 jump the questions.
Oh, okay. And what about ask the audience? They get rid of that. Remember?
I'm sorry. It's not 50-50. It was ask the audience and then 2 jump the questions is what they had.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Because I remember when it was with Regis, like it was huge, and then they kind of like overdid it, and then it went back into syndication, and Meredith picked it up. But it was always a great show to watch. I love game shows. Huge fan. Huge.
Yeah, I got them both on my Google Drive, so I can send it too.
Nice. Was Meredith nice? Talking to her, was she nice to you and everything?
Oh, she was great. She was super nice, and not only was she nice, she actually hand wrote me a card after the show.
No way.
And sent it to me, telling me I was one of her favorite contestants, and she was so happy I did good on the show.
Yeah, she seemed that way with her person. I know some people though they can do the fake personality, so I don't know if that's how
she was. I've been on enough sets where I've seen people who are definitely not
look at that. There you are. That's it. We could see that. Look at that. You're so happy. That's great. Oh, there's a daisy sour cream.
I've been on enough sets where people are complete dickholes. Like I don't want to who gives a shit?
Well, yeah, it is.
I was on the set of a show as an extra a long time ago called Mind Games. And I'm not saying this guy's a dick because I don't know. But after every set, it was with Christian Slater and Steve Zahn. And after every time they cut and switch cameras, Christian Slater would go off by himself and just chug on his vape like nonstop. And other actors would talk to each other, but nobody ever talked to him when the cameras weren't rolling. I like him. So I was like, this dude must be very hard to deal with.
Good actor, though. I'll give him that.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with it. I mean, if you're that hard to deal with and still getting work, then you're really good. You're really good.
Okay. I also did want to, this is a wrestling channel, so I knew it would eventually come up here. You were a pro wrestling ring announcer for AIW, correct?
No, not AIW.
Not AIW. You were a pro wrestling ring
announcer.
I'm
not Steve Guy.
For which promotion?
AIW didn't even exist, I don't think, when this happened.
You did have a stint as one, correct?
MELW.
Thank you. Okay. Tell us.
Indie scum to its core.
And how was that experience?
I'm sure my experience was much better than your buddy Matt's, but Have you ever asked him about it?
Oh we talked about it. Good times.
Okay.
Great
They
times.
were cool to me, so I don't want to trash them, but I mean
Yeah.
it's an indie promotion in Alliance, Ohio that would get between 20 and 100 people. Like it's in Armories. It is exactly what you expect. There was some big timing by some of the guys because I wore tennis shoes as a ring announcer. That upset them.
Oh no, how dare you.
I was bigger than everybody in the promotion. I had to sell being scared for some guy who was like your build and your look. And I was like, this is the most unbelievable thing ever. Me ducking between the ropes because I was so scared of this guy. Like, you got to give me a break.
How long was your run?
I guess a year, 6 months. I don't know.
Hey.
Basically, they went on hiatus. Matt stopped doing it.
Yeah.
I did like 3 more shows. They went on hiatus, and then I never came back.
Did you,
when they started back up?
Other than cowering for the one guy, did you get to do any angles, anything, or were you just?
Yeah, I was like the ring announcer who had to like tell them what the back office wanted. That's why I was like, well, according to the commissioner, he told me to tell you this next match is no holds barred, and he's like, what? And I'm like, oh.
What the hell? What's going on here?
It was that kind of stuff.
Okay. Did you ever do any commentary?
No,
nothing. I think you'd be good at it.
Nobody ever asked me to, Dan.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe for AIW, like who's their guy? Who's their play-by?
AIW, I was already in Chicago by the time Steve got involved with them, so I don't really, I never really had anything to do with them.
With them. Okay.
Just going backstage because it's like I'm not paying to get in.
I just hope I hope they're doing okay. Just with because that's what worries me. WWE will be fine. AEW should be fine. The indie promotions are what worries me.
If people want to support them, they should download some of their stuff on indie wrestling and that stuff because it will really make a huge difference.
I mean, because with Mania Week being wiped out, I mean that was going to AIW. You guys were planning on, and we'll talk. We're actually, you know what? Now that we're bringing this up, let's talk about it. We'll get to this year, but let's just talk about how many WrestleManias have you been to?
I guess I could just look at all my cups that I have displayed here.
I need a drum roll.
9.
9 WrestleManias. Wow.
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that's 9. 9. I also have a cup from Raw and a cup from an NXT takeover up here. So nice. I had and a Roddy Piper collector's cup. So I had to differentiate them.
And unfortunately, this streak that you had, going, came to an end. But it wasn't Brock Lesnar that ended the streak. It was coronavirus.
It didn't. Sorry, I cut you off.
That's okay.
It didn't come to an end. WrestleMania in the Performance Center is a false prophet. Like, it's going to be the worst show anybody's seen in their lives.
Are you going to watch? Because I'm not.
Nope. I might, just out of morbid curiosity. But their empty arena shows have been so bad.
I'm sure SmackDown's terrible right now.
So bad.
I kind of want to look, but I'm just not. I don't even want to because it was depressing.
I didn't even want to watch AEW on Wednesday because I was like, wrestling just doesn't work in empty arenas. But then they're like, let's not shoot the crowd. Let's put wrestlers in the audience. Oh, all of a sudden it's better because you're not just looking at Steve Austin cutting a promo to empty chairs and getting depressed.
Hell yeah. And then it's just like, okay, this doesn't work. It doesn't work. Jeez.
You can't micromanage in this type of situation.
I get it. They're dealt a bad hand, and I commend them for wanting to have the show must go on, pal. And Vince, if he had it his way,
I don't commend them for that. Let these people. I mean, I get it. Like AIW's in a more or AEW's in a more precarious situation because they don't have all the money to fall back on. Like. They don't have all the archives to show on TV. No. I'm not even sure they should be running still, but I did enjoy the show Wednesday.
It was nice.
But WWE can put on whatever they want in their time slot and just do it because the shows aren't even good and they've been so micromanaged for the last 20 years that it's borderline unwatchable no matter how good the talent is.
I can't. Let's talk about what we'll get to this year's. I do want to ask about going to 9 WrestleManias. That's impressive. That's incredible. I've only been to 2, so I got a lot of catching up to do. I'll be there next year. I was at 29, and 35 last year, which of course
I knew you were at 35, yeah.
But 29, yeah, which was that show sucked ass. I mean,
You only go to the ones in New Jersey?
Yeah. I was thinking
Short
of going
drive.
this year, but I kid you not, something just told me I better wait till next year, and I'm kind of glad I made that decision. Never knew any of this was going to happen, but I was just like, you know what? Let's wait.
Did you go with your one buddy both times?
No, I went with another friend the last time, but of course Mike, who you guys know, to Club of the Man 1993 last year. But you go every year. You with your crew, Midnight Heat. And we'll talk about them. What is it about going to WrestleMania? Why do you? I mean, obviously you go just to hang out with your friends, and it's a great way to reunite since you guys are all across the country now and whatnot. If I understand that correctly.
You just answered it. It's definitely not the show at this point.
No, clearly
the first one was so awesome to be at, but the last one that was like an impressive show was probably.
You gonna say 30?
No, I'd say 31, and I was miserable, but because Sting lost, but it was still really cool because it was like during the day and all that stuff, and it felt like a lot was going on, like The Rock and Ronda Rousey segment and stuff.
Yeah, 31 was awesome. You notice since
Sorry.
I was gonna say, since the shows have gotten longer and longer and longer, the quality has gone down. What a freaking concept! Let's just drag it out, shall we?
The last 2 years,
yeah.
The one in New Orleans was still fun because New Orleans is such a great place to go to. But I would say the Orlando one was amazing because we ended up getting put on the floor because they put a camera in our seat.
I was gonna say, if you wanted to kind of tell that story, like you got.
We were like 10 rows from the absolute top of the stadium. We got there really early because we wanted to watch the 205 the cruiserweight match between Austin Aries and Pac. I guess it was Neville then. So we were there super early. The guy showed up. He's like, we need to put a camera here. And he's like, so either you guys have to sit down the entire show or you can ask them if they'll put you in a different spot. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit down because even if I'm not cheering, I need to stand up and like stretch my legs and get like go to the bathroom, get a snack. Like, what are they talking about? So we went down there. And they're supposed to put us in another seat. And this guy's like, yeah, we could do it, but you got to pay me like $50 a person. And that was not accurate at all. You don't have to pay anything if they move you out of the seat. So the supervisor came by and he's like, oh, no, here he comes. Get back in the cut. And he was trying to rip us off, like skim extra money on top of them doing it. But then a supervisor came and did it, and we didn't pay anything. And then we got put down on the floor on the very first row where they start going up. So it was like the back, it's not in the actual stands yet because it's a football field, but they put like a riser there. Yeah, so we got to sit there, and Linda McMahon walked right in front of us like 3 minutes after because we were like, there's like the floor seats for the ring. Yeah. Like the ring's here, and then you got the seats around it. Then there's like a walkway all around those, and then that's where the risers are. So we were right up against this one walkway. So those seats were awesome. And the Goldberg-Brock Lesnar match was great. Seeing the Hardy Boys come back was great. AJ Styles versus Shane was actually really cool. So
that's actually good stuff.
That was actually really fun. The last two, the shows themselves were not good and not very fun, but the weekends were fun.
Oh, yeah, with the Hall of Fame and Access and just the town partying, celebrate. I mean, that's why it's
I've never been to Access.
Access is fun. Although they canceled that, they canceled the Hall of Fame, they canceled everything except for WrestleMania. So everything just went, which just sucks because even if the show doesn't deliver, there's enough stuff to do in the host city, whether it's in Orlando, whether it's New Orleans, whether it's New York or Tampa. They should really go back there for 38. I think make good. Hey, we can't make it there this year. We'll come back for 38. That's what I would do.
We'll see if they even end up making next year's. The way this stuff's going, could be 18 months. So, not to get down, and be a downer.
We'll be there in LA. I'm calling it now. I guarantee it. And I just said that.
I mean, hey. The Bay Area is one of the 3 epicenters right now, so by the time it works its way all the way down here, the entire country will have been burned through. We'll be fine.
Yeah, we're good. We'll just have it in a giant bubble, one of those domes.
Everybody at that point will either have immunity or be dead. So
Hey,
free
either
to go.
way, hey, just put a couple corpses in the crowd. There you go. I mean, the crowd usually is pretty much dead by the end of the show, anyways. So
it'll be just as lively as their normal crowds.
So, 9 WrestleMania. So you started 26 was the first one, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, in Atlanta.
Or 27. I'm sorry, that was 27.
Yes, 27. 26 was in Phoenix. We did not go.
You didn't go to Miami, correct?
No, I did.
Oh,
Matt didn't go.
See, I'm going off his memory. Okay, so just get rid of that. But 28, what was that like? See, that's one of my favorite. I got to ask you about 28. I love that show. I thought the 3 big matches delivered.
Which one was that?
You got the end of an era, Hell in a Cell, one of the best matches I've seen in WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't care. I hate Triple H. I hate The Undertaker.
What?
I think Shawn Michaels is possibly the most overrated guy in the history of wrestling.
People are going
he's still.
I'm kidding.
Are they really?
No, they don't.
Nobody's watching this live.
No, we're not live anyway, but they're going to be coming out.
I actually like Shawn Michaels a lot. I'm saying he's overrated because people say he's the greatest of all time, and I wouldn't even put him in the top 20. But he is an all-time great.
Yes.
If that's fair. I hate watching. I don't like watching Undertaker. I hate watching Triple H. I just don't find them entertaining in the least, and that's my opinion. I'm not the
it just doesn't
arbiter of fact. I'm not the guy making the all-time rankings. I just don't enjoy them. I don't enjoy their gimmicks. I don't enjoy their work, and I don't enjoy the way they portray the characters, and that's just the way it is. One of my favorite matches of all time is Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25, though. That's the match that got me back into wrestling. Ooh. But that doesn't mean I'm just not a fan of The Undertaker. And while I think Shawn Michaels is great, I could think of a lot more guys I'd rather watch. I just don't really like his promo style. And if you watch Shawn Michaels in the early 90s and then you watch him in the late 90s and then you watch him later, they're all great, but he's like basically the same character the whole time. So I guess maybe I just like guys that switch stuff up more. I'm not sure.
Like their characters, like Rock or Jericho, who's gone through so many evolutions.
Or maybe I'm just biased because when I was a kid I liked Bret Hart better. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Hitman, you gotta love the Hitman. Although, who just crapped on him and Shawn Michaels? Who was it? Somebody, their name escapes me. Oh, it was Jake Roberts. He said they were terrible champions. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Like, okay, Jake. Well,
Shawn Michaels' original run is pretty bad, I think, but that's not his fault.
No, he was in a crappy situation. I mean, they were getting
same with Bret Hart, really. Yeah, Bret Hart in '97 was awesome, but
oh my goodness.
Anyways, I just don't want it to be like I don't like Shawn Michaels. Like he might be one of the best in ring all time. I just don't think he's overall
the whole
yes.
Okay.
Like even if somebody said he was the best in the ring, I'd be like, well, I'm not a wrestler, so I'll go with your take on that. He's very fun to watch in the ring. I just I don't know. I always like guys. Like I love Jake Roberts. He's not an athlete by any stretch of the imagination, but even his matches in ring, I can still watch, but it's mostly because of his promos.
Character.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely like that stuff. Some people have won me over on pretty much just their ring work, like AJ Styles, but he got a lot better when his character got better, even though his in-ring wasn't as impressive. So it's like a give and take, I guess.
I'm kind of thinking about asking you this question. It's the stereotypical, but you know what? Since we're on the subject here, who was on if you had to make a Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling, putting you on the spot, who do you put on that Mount Rushmore? Yours. Just you. Like your opinion. What do you got?
Well, no, I mean, you can't do it based on my opinion because
okay.
if you look at Mount Rushmore,
okay,
you had some of the greatest presidents of all time, and then some of the people who. Okay, so Mount Rushmore is Washington, Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Jackson.
I thought it was Jefferson.
Jefferson. Okay, so you got 3 people listed as like 3 of the best presidents, and then the guy who just was president when it was made, right?
I think I had to look that one up.
I got to look that up too now. Now it's going to be both of us looking at our phones.
Well, that'll make for good content. Mount Rushmore, here we go. Washington, Jefferson, Teddy.
Yeah, okay. And Theodore Roosevelt, who was the president like 20 years earlier. Mm-hmm. So if you go by that, okay,
Yeah.
All the greatest wrestlers of all time. If you're just going by the greatest ones of all time in any wrestling ever,
Yeah.
I mean, what did you say? Like Jim Londos?
Who?
I'm going through wrestling history. Who's supposed to be like the biggest draws of all
Well,
time?
if we're talking draws, see,
That's what I'm saying. But whatever you do, you have to do. John Cena has to be on it because he was the like. It's much easier to say WWE Mount Rushmore.
All right, you want me
So
to do
WWE
that?
Mount Rushmore is very simple, very easy. I can give it to you without even a second's thought.
Okay.
It's clearly Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, and John Cena. And it's not because those are the four best. Those are their three biggest draws, plus the guy who was their last big draw.
What about Rock?
So he was not one of the last big draw. If you're putting the four biggest draws they ever had on there, The Rock would be on there. But Teddy Roosevelt was on there because he was president right before they started. So John Cena would have to be on Mount Rushmore. See, I'm looking at it besides just like who I think are the four best or my four favorite.
I like that because I feel like nobody else has ever done that. Seriously, I see all the when the questions posed, it's the same old shit over and over and over. And, it's Hogan, Austin, Rock.
Yeah, I mean, you just go, oh, who's their four biggest draws? Okay, Bruno Sammartino, Hogan, Steve Austin, The Rock. Then you're done. That's not what they did. They weren't like, who's the four best presidents? Like, who are the three best presidents and the most recent best president?
Yeah.
In their opinion. But if I was just going like, who are my four favorite? It wouldn't even be that. It wouldn't even be close to that because my four favorites wouldn't even be all WWE guys.
Well, you were a WCW guy growing up, correct?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I started getting into first. This is exactly what I'll tell you. I watched Raw. My friends in middle school, I'm in 7th grade. They want me to start watching wrestling. The two guys I sit next to, Phil and Dan, they both watch wrestling every Monday. They talk about it every day on Tuesday at school. So I'm like, I feel like I'm missing out. So I better start watching. My friend Dan's like, you got to watch Raw. It's so good. I watched the very first episode. The main event is Steve Austin versus Ken Shamrock. They spend the whole episode, like I had watched wrestling. Let me paraphrase it and go, step back. When I was a kid, all my cousins watched wrestling. They loved it. On Sundays, I'd put it on. So like I knew Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior. I knew Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Like I knew all that stuff. I wasn't like huge into it, but I also knew then I was like WWF is the main one. WCW is not. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, I watched it, turned it on. The entire show, they're like, tonight, Steve Austin versus the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock. They spend the entire episode, which is funny because they don't do this stuff anymore, and it hurts their product quite a bit. They spend the entire episode talking about how dangerous Ken Shamrock was, how he was the best martial artist, mixed martial artist, which back then nobody even... It was a very hardcore thing. People didn't know, like UFC and that. It was like whatever. He's a great cage fighter on this, and he's the world's most dangerous man. And you're going to see him tonight. He's going to take on Stone Cold Steve Austin. They made it sound like this dude was a monster. Yeah. And then he goes out there and loses in like 5 minutes. And I was like, this Ken Shamrock guy sucks. Like they said this guy was so tough, and he just lost really quick. So I was like, I don't know if I like this. And a lot of the other characters on Raw at the time were just, it was like some of their best stuff and some of their worst stuff too, like the oddities and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So then my friend told me to watch Nitro, and Macho Man Randy Savage was on, and he was cutting this blistering promo. And obviously everybody knows who he is because he's got the voice and he did the Slim Jim commercials and stuff. Yeah, and he's just talking about how he's going to kick his ass and stuff, and he's in this crowd with Miss Elizabeth next to him, like all these fans around. He's like, "We're gonna get you, you're still smudging," and all that. And then the camera like goes in on him. I'm like, "This is awesome!" And like Hogan is selling for him in the ring, like, "No," like it was because it was probably at that point, would have been early 98, maybe late 97. It was like when the NWO started fracturing before they became like Wolfpack and stuff and all that, because that's part of what started, if I remember. Like Macho Man left to join the Wolfpack. Anyways, he was just like cutting into him like, "Yo, Hollywood, you're a punk, you're no good," and all that. And I was like, all right, this is sweet. And then I would watch both of them off and on just to keep up with everybody at school. Summer of 98, before I was going into 8th grade. They had Goldberg versus Hogan for the title, July 9th, I think, the Georgia Dome. That was the first time I ever watched wrestling. I was so jacked up that I stayed up till 2 a.m. to watch the replay that was on TNT. And then I stayed up all the way to 5 a.m. just so I could watch that main event again. And that was like the match, even though Goldberg wasn't my favorite and Hogan wasn't like, they weren't my two favorites, but for some reason, that is the match that like cemented like I was a wrestling fan. If that makes sense.
Okay. I was going to ask you what was the match, because for me it was Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels. I watched it. I'm like, I got to watch this stuff. Now I'm a late bloomer. I didn't start watching until 08, so I got a lot of catching up to do.
Oh, wait. I thought you were talking like 1992, and I was like, weren't you like 2 or 3?
No. But
what year were you born?
94.
Okay, so you would have been -2 at that point.
But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. What was the match?
That's not a late bloomer. That's about the same age. You were like, what, 14 when you watched it?
The Monday Night.
So I was like 12. Like, that's basically the same age.
But you got to watch when wrestling was popular, when it was cool. I mean, now it's got its fans, but I just feel it will never get back to that level.
Well, how did you get into it then? Like, who convinced you to turn it on?
It was 8th grade. Clear as day. I remember the guys were watching, we had these computers in the back, and I was like, guys, what you watching back there? Some of my friends, and they're like, oh, it's some wrestling, and we're watching this. And it was after WrestleMania 24, and they were watching the match with Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels, and I was hooked. I was like, this is interesting. And then I tuned into Raw, and the rest is history.
I mean, that's basically the same exact thing. Like, who cares if it's popular? I feel like
but
you must be insecure about it or something.
No, I'm not insecure. Well, you know how people get, that's fake. I'm like, yeah, you know what else is fake? Those stupid soap operas you watch. They suck too. And all this reality TV bullshit. I just hate when people degrade it, because the guys and girls are putting their bodies on the line. People have died. People have been injured. It ain't ballet. And they think it's easy. It's not.
All right, JR.
Well, let me tell you here, folks. This is JR. See, I got to talk out of the side of my mouth. I got a little bout here going on. That was terrible.
Also, who cares if people don't like it or think it's fake? Like, if I stopped enjoying things because other people cast aspersions towards them, I would be a very miserable person.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't that used to it still kind of does bother me to a certain degree. It's like that famous what was it, David Schultz, when I feel like I just want to like slap the John Stossel in the face. How was Oberham slap? That fake to you? I mean, that was great.
Another thing that really got me into it is that we used to go to the Stowe Library after school in middle school. We used to walk there from my grade school, and we would read the sporting news, and I'd always read the NBA section. And in the back, they had an ad that was for the Pro Wrestling Torch, and it said, find out the information they don't want you to know. And if you sent them $5, you would get a free month subscription with 4 issues. And I was like, even at 13, I had $5, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and I sent away for it, and that was like my first dirt sheet or whatever. And I would read, and I read it front to back, and then I was like hooked, and that was also like which exploded my mind. I'm like immediately thinking back now to being October 1998, and it's a little chilly outside, and walking down to the mailbox and pulling it out and popping the tab because it would come on Saturdays, and then flipping it out and reading about like, oh, what happened on Power Pro Wrestling this week? What happened on ECW TV? And all the notes. And it was like in New Japan, and it was crazy. That was like what really opened me up into it. But at that point I was already hooked, so it didn't really matter.
Like sway you one way or the other. Okay. As far as going to shows, I'm sure you've been to outside of WrestleMania. Is there a favorite event that you've attended, like as terms of the card and the crowd and just your overall? You had a great time, because I know the Gund Arena, a lot of great shows there.
The only show I ever saw at the Gund when it was still the Gund was Invasion.
I'm getting to that show actually. Did you have a good time there? A good show?
Oh yeah, that was the first wrestling show I went to. Yeah, so I loved it.
Got a big buy rate, I know.
Yeah, I was probably the only WCW fan in the stands. I do remember this guy in front of me saying that the reason Goldberg wasn't there is because he was playing the Hulk in the new movie.
What?
And I said, he's not playing the Hulk. The Hulk's going to be a computer-generated character. And he's like, no, he's be the Hulk. They're going to make him green. He's going to be the Hulk. And I was like, No, they're not. Go look it up. I think at the time I was probably reading either Coming Attractions, that
Yeah.
website from Canada, or Ain't It Cool News. And I was like, no, you could find out online. He's like, shut up. You're a dumb kid. You don't know anything. And I was like, whatever.
Okay, whatever. Actually, I'm glad we're talking about the invasion because that's actually where I'm doing a watch along. So I started with '98. I'm up to 2001, and I'm watching this invasion, and I'm just like, man, did they drop the ball with this? What did
Oh,
you feel
yeah.
in the? Because I'm it's tough to get through because it's just like there's so much missed opportunity. Could have been the biggest angle ever. Think about it.
I
WCW,
mean,
WWF. That's it.
it's still their biggest non-WrestleMania buy rate, I believe.
Yeah. So it shows there was an interest. How did you feel watching the invasion angle? How it happened? How it ended? Just your overall thoughts, if you want to.
It was probably not till I was so deep into the product at the time. It was probably not till like August after SummerSlam that I realized it was completely ruined and beyond,
Yeah.
like, off the rails. But I just remember the most exciting part was being on my parents' dial-up internet access every Monday after school, like trying to read these websites to see who was rumored to be backstage that week or who could be debuting that night and things like that.
Okay. It's just funny that Ric Flair comes in the night after. Like, all these guys. Goldberg comes in after. NW.
Eric Bischoff.
Yeah, like the whole thing. And then who they had? They had Shane and Stephanie lead ECW. I'm like, this is dumb. This is all about the McMahons. And to me,
Well, if you remember what I was just saying about how they built up Ken Shamrock the whole time to the point where it almost, like, in my mind, it worked against them.
Yeah.
They didn't build up anything. The people
Nope.
watching at shows at that point didn't know who the main WCW guys were. They have totally lost. That was like proof there. They don't know how to actually promote wrestling, and they haven't for 20 years at this point.
it was the beginning of the.
Yeah.
They started slowly lose that audience, and I'll never forget. I watched it. It was one of the worst matches. I felt so bad. Booker T versus Buff Bagwell.
Oh, yeah.
Man, was that a train wreck. And I heard that they were supposed to do WCW on Monday nights. They were going to have their own show, and then they shit the bed with that match. And it's like, well, what did you expect to happen?
Well, even then, they were going to put it on Saturday night, which the show that eventually became WWE Confidential on that time slot was supposed to be WCW.
And it's funny, though. They were in Atlanta 2 weeks later, so I want, if they would have just waited 2 more weeks, maybe things would have turned out differently. Who knows?
This is nothing against her because she seems like a very lovely person, actually in real life, from people I know that have dealt with her. But Stephanie McMahon being involved with the product was like the very beginning of it going completely in the toilet with the scripted promos and, forgetting how wrestling actually works. I mean, they're not wrestling. I know it's World Wrestling Entertainment, but they don't promote wrestling at this point. They promote something different.
We make movies, pal. I'm like, okay, your movies suck. How about that? Can we get a new director?
Wrestling. They have wrestling in the ring. They have some of the best talent in the world in every step and form and way. But for some reason, it's just so tightly controlled. It's like a sterile product. It's like a computer simulation of a wrestling program.
It looks too clean. It's too bright. It's too colorful. Bischoff said that. He's like, if he was running the show, and of course, how long did he last in charge of SmackDown? Like 2 months?
4 months. I think it was the July to September.
And nothing changed. I heard he hardly did shit. So I'm like, well, thanks for coming, Eric. Somebody said Vince hired him just to fire him. I don't know. Like, and has your fandom, like, is it kind of waned? I mean, I know AEW's kind of brought it back up, but in terms of
my fandom was pretty much done. I hadn't watched Raw on a regular basis probably in like 3 years now.
Wow.
I haven't watched SmackDown on a regular basis in longer. I would only watch NXT TakeOver and stuff on the network, and I would still watch the pay-per-views or whatever you want to call them.
Big shows.
But at this point, I canceled the network after the last Saudi show, and I got it under a fake email right now just so I could watch Goldberg's match and also the interview with Austin on the network. But yeah, after reading about the Saudi Arabia bullshit, I was like, I can't support this company financially. They're scumbags, and I should.
Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got their money. I hope they Hope they live with it. But
It's fine. I mean, I've given them enough money over the years. I've still bought merch from them. It's just,
go to WrestleMania.
you know, there's nothing in the product. Like, I love watching the archive stuff, but I also have bought so many DVDs over the years that, you know, I can always go back and watch those. I just, they're not uploading enough new archived stuff to be worth the cost of admission, really. So I'll probably from now on, I won't be a regular subscriber. I'll just every couple months, if it piques my interest, I'll get it for a few months and then go again, leave it again.
Did you probably heard, the rumor that they're going to take the big pay-per-views off the network? I'm like, you fools. This was supposed to be this great platform, $9.99, and you're going to sell it to another streaming service? Kiss my ass, because that's bullshit.
I don't know if that's really a rumor. He said it on their stockholder call that's what they're trying to do. I mean, it's more of a rumor that somebody will actually give them money for it.
Well, yeah, that's true. I should thank you for clarifying that. I mean, the decisions this company makes, and it's one guy. The buck stops with one man.
Did you hear ESPN is going to be showing old WrestleManias now?
Yeah, I did. Well, they have nothing else to show since all the sports have been canceled. At least we still got wrestling until one of the wrestlers gets sick. And I'm sure
but I mean, they'll still do this because these are old at least.
I'd check them out, although they're not really old. They're 30, 32, and 35.
That's the only three they've agreed so far?
Yeah. 30's good. 32 stunk. 35 wasn't bad.
32 is the Dallas one.
That one was awful.
I should have said that's the beginning of when they got horrible, but Orlando was fun, so I forgot about that.
But yeah, 32 was just like, I remember watching that show. I'm like, guys, it's almost 11 o'clock, right? Okay, it's still going.
I didn't even watch the main event. My friend was wandering the lobby, just sat down. He was just sitting there, and I just went out there and talked to him.
Really?
And I was like, the main event's starting. I was like, I don't even care.
Nobody cares.
It's Triple H versus Roman Reigns. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, that was... they worked hard, but nobody cared. Gotta get Roman over, pal. You like the big dog?
If you want to get Roman over, how about stop scripting his promos and just let him be a silent badass? But nope, that ain't going to work. Let's make him like John Cena and be cringeworthy because he can't pull off that ridiculous dialogue.
I know. Look, I was in the building for Royal Rumble 2014 when it came down to him and Batista, and we were pissed because Bryan wasn't in the Rumble. They fucked up. We all got behind Roman because at that point, they didn't screw up his character yet. He was a silent badass, just like you said. And then the year later, crowd turned on him because they scripted him to death. They don't get it. They just don't get it, man. I mean, it's kind of changed a little bit with Heyman running Raw, but still, it's not, I don't know.
I'm sure it's better. I've heard it's better, but nobody's told me it's good enough for me to want to tune in.
No, I wouldn't waste your time, But you said you're a huge fan of AEW? You watch every week?
Yes, I do actually watch live at 5 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. I've only missed twice, I think.
And what is it about Dynamite that, like I said, the unscripted promos, just the kind of that...
Unscripted promos, I don't feel like I can tell everything that's going to happen before the show happens. It's actually entertaining. The commentary is good. The promos are good. The wrestling's good. I hope this isn't the start of me contracting the Rona and everybody's going to see me die on camera.
You'll be okay.
Yeah, all that stuff. It's just fresh. It's like fresh air, and it's still like big American promotion. Like, even though I would watch New Japan, it just still had that like cultural disconnect that would stop me from 100% getting into it. But this, it's not there. And so all these guys I didn't even like before are like now some of my favorites, like Cody Rhodes and stuff. But I definitely thought, that's horrible.
Every time I see it, I'm like, can we get rid of that, please?
But like Chris Jericho, I remember last year watching their press conference when Chris Jericho came out, and my wife was like, wow, this is so low budget and bad. And I was like, I know. The press conference?
Oh, yeah, the press conference. Oh, yeah.
It was terrible if you don't remember. And I had very little hopes for them. And I was like, they're in way over their head. Good luck. I hope they get on a good TV channel or something. But then, what was it, Double or Nothing?
Wow.
And it was amazing. It was so good. and then I was pretty much hooked. And I'm like, man, I can't wait for Dynamite to start. And then should say there was a part where it wasn't as good, but both the sets of shows building up to the pay-per-views have been like the best shows I've watched in my life almost. And it also feels a lot like the old WCW, but updated with more sensible. It's like watching Nitro with just as good wrestling throughout the whole thing, good promos throughout the whole thing, and it actually has logical booking and not just like nonsense happening for no reason.
Like, stuff that
so
doesn't
it's
make
like
sense.
They took the format of the show though and updated it and modernized it. And after everybody's been watching WWE, basically the same product since 2002, probably hasn't changed.
Basically,
it feels very fresh.
I agree. Like I said, it's been a breath of fresh air. I hope they can continue going. Like I said, week to week, we'll see. They said we'll see you on the next episode of Dynamite, but they didn't say when, which I actually thought was kind of a smart way to cover their asses just in case things get worse here on out.
Oh, we're like probably a few days from domestic flights getting banned or grounded, so it's probably smart not to say they'll be there next Wednesday because who knows?
Exactly. Anything, like I said, I think we went through all the questions here. If there's anything else you want to touch on.
Yeah, I want to say AEW sucks because they've run Chicago 3 times since I've moved, and I have not appreciate that. I could have gone to all those shows if they did it a year earlier.
I was gonna say, I've been to a show and it was a good time. It was a good, it was about half empty, but you know what? Hey, they're still young. They're still building.
Which one was that?
The one in Cleveland. It was in January.
Yeah. No, I remember.
Look at my calendar. It was a good time. It was different. It was nice going to something other than WWE because it's the same shit with WWE. It's just like, oh my god, I know what to expect. And I always get terrible shows in Pittsburgh. Like 9 times out of 10, Raw sucks, or the pay-per-views I went to sucked. Very rarely do I get to go to a good show. Does not happen.
I've been to a couple shows in Pittsburgh.
Really?
Bragging rights.
Ugh.
Went to that. I went to that with Matt. That was at the old Mellon
Civic Arena. Well, I call it, Mellon, Civic, whatever.
And then I went to one. We went to one at the new place. It might have just been Raw. I don't remember.
Really, I can't believe you guys were in my hometown. I wasn't at Bragging Rights, but I might have been at Raw. I bet you I was. I don't know why I didn't go to Bragging Rights. Oh well, I probably didn't miss much anyways.
We had to go in person because they had the Miz versus Morrison match.
Really? That was okay. I was wondering why you drove because Pittsburgh. It's a decent drive. It's not down the road.
It's a total hour and a half. Oh my god!
But anything that you want to talk about? I know you got Spider-Man behind you. Big Spidey fan.
Yes.
Big superhero fan. Who's your favorite? I'll just throw it right at you. Who, if you had to pick one, is it Spidey? It's got to be Spidey.
Of course.
Okay. Why do you like Spider-Man? What about him as a character appeals to you?
He was the most relatable. He was the funniest, and he had a good heart.
Wow. Who's your favorite? Okay, let's shift to the movies. I should rephrase that. Who's your favorite guy to portray Spider-Man in the films? Toby? Andrew?
I guess Tom Holland, even though I think Tobey Maguire was really great as Peter Parker, and Andrew Garfield looked really good as Spider-Man and stuff. But I think Tom Holland's probably the best mix of both roles. Yeah.
He plays the nerd, but he can also very witty, and and just he just plays that. He knows that character so well, the ins and outs.
He's like the first Spider-Man to not be in his 30s too.
I know the other guys. How old? Yeah, like you said, in their 30s.
I love Spider-Man, but I should not be playing him.
You do have a Spider-Man outfit, don't you?
Yes.
That is pretty cool. Where'd you get that from again? Was it Doritos?
I won it from Doritos on Twitter.
No way.
Yeah, way.
That's incredible. I saw you and I'm like, holy crap, that's actually pretty damn good.
It's very nice. Way nicer when I could buy or make. So
nice. Any other superheroes that you like? For me, it's Batman and Spider-Man. Those are my 2 favorites. Do you have a number 2, 3?
Spider-Man's definitely way up at the top. I'll give you ones okay. I love the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. I'm so happy, even though it sucks that Disney bought Fox, and it's bad for the movie industry in the long run. They're making Fantastic Four merchandise again. Hey. So I get that out of it. But besides that, I like Deadpool. I like
Oh.
Captain America. I used to like the Punisher before every twisted gun nut and police officer started, thinking extrajudicial violence was something to look up to. It's like the Punisher's a sweet character, but nobody should want to be like him. That's beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
I love Hawkeye.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite DC characters are Mr. Miracle and Starman, only the Jack Knight version. So, yeah. I love the Fantastic Four. The Thing is amazing.
Thing. They made a couple of those movies, but they never really. To me, those movies never really seemed. Were they any good? Any of them?
No, none of them are good. I think the other thing too is besides the Thing, Doctor Doom is like my favorite villain, and he's the Fantastic Four's main villain. So
nice. Okay. Anyways, just lost my train of thought. Something about the movies. Favorite superhero movie. Since we're going down the rabbit hole.
The first Avengers.
Okay, nice pick. I like that movie a lot. For just talking about me, I guess I could throw it in there. Dark Knight.
Pretty good.
You gotta love the Dark Knight. Joker. Joker. Have you seen Joker?
Yes.
Should I check it out? I need a movie to watch.
It's very well made. I kind of hate the fact that it's a Joker movie because it's not really anything like the Joker from the comics, but that's just me being a comic book fan.
Actually, let's talk about the Clem Prince himself. Who's your favorite Joker?
I don't know. I don't really think any of the live action portrayals have really been what I think the character should be.
Okay, See, I don't know anything about. I mean, I know the comics.
No, I mean they've changed it now. Joker in the current, like, if you've read any of the Scott Snyder Batman comics. If you've read any of right there, I got the Rona.
You'll be okay.
I need some water is really what I think it is. The Scott Snyder Batman comics of recent years, he's super violent and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, but I grew up reading my dad's old comics. So they were like the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams comics from the 70s and stuff. And the Joker that's most like that is like the Mark Hamill Joker from the cartoon.
Love Mark Hamill.
So it's like, I don't know. I watched Batman as a kid. That was the first superhero movie I saw. So I always feel like Jack Nicholson is great. And The Dark Knight is the best Batman movie. So even though if I don't really necessarily like the choices they make in the movie, like Heath Ledger has the best performance of any of them. So God. I guess what I would say is I don't have a clear favorite, but I know it's not Jared Leto.
I heard he's a good actor, right? It's just, was it the way that the character was written? Who do you like with that?
That's first. I really liked Birds of Prey, but Suicide Squad was horrible.
It's not a good movie.
No, not in my opinion.
Okay. Well, to me, it seems like DC can't really get much right. I mean, Wonder Woman was a hit. Aquaman, was that good? I don't know.
Aquaman is not good, but it's pretty fun to watch.
Watchable. Okay, so they got a couple, decent, but it just seems.
I really liked Birds of Prey. I thought that was like fun in the same way Aquaman was, but also better. But it's kind of incoherent at first, but I did like that.
Okay, I know they got the new Batman coming out. We'll see how that is. I would like a good Batman movie because, like I said, the last one I saw was The Dark Knight Rises, and it was okay, but
that was a huge disappointment. I thought compared to the as a trilogy capper.
Oh, easily. I mean, there were so many plot holes. I'm just like, how did he get back on the island again? How did he get... There was no guards at the top of the cave, remember?
I've watched it since, and with all my expectations stripped away from it, it's fine. But when I saw it in the movie theater, I hated it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I hated the ending so much.
Oh, jeez.
Thematically, they spend the entire movie building upon the theme that Batman is more than a person, he's a symbol. Right. The entire movie, they build on it. And then in the last scene, they go away from that. Oh, Bruce Wayne's alive. Actually, it's all good. Like, he has to die for his symbol and sacrifice to mean something. They build like a religious analogy and then they don't follow through with it.
Like, oh,
That's like I get in the gospels, Jesus comes back from the dead, but that's a completely different thing. You're just referencing sacrifice versus iconography. So it's like the way the cross is a symbol of sacrifice now. Batman in the way the movie's building it up is a symbol of the city's solidarity and resilience. But for when he survives it and then just leaves town and never comes back, it's like,
okay.
well, no, it's not, because the real Batman is an asshole who left.
Yeah, that was not. Well, I think a lot of it had to do with. I think if Heath lived, that third movie would have been radically. I bet you they had to change that big time. That always made me wonder, what would that third film have been like if Heath lived? I think it would have been completely different. You know, honestly, I feel like this was their second best approach. They're like, this is what we can go with. It's not what we really wanted to do, but because I heard Nolan at the time was like, I don't even know if I should make a third film. You know, maybe he should have just stopped after.
Yeah, he only made that third one because of how much money they gave him, and they basically were like, you can make whatever movie you want if you make this.
Go ahead, have fun. Here, it's your sandbox, you know, and have a way with it. So
that's why we got Dunkirk.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like Interstellar and Dunkirk were like, he basically made the third Batman movie to get like a blank check to make what he wanted after that.
Okay. In terms of comic books, how big is your collection? How many do you have? Do you keep count?
No. Most of my comics that are actual comics are at my parents' house in Ohio.
Okay.
I have 2 boxes here, but I have all my trade paperbacks. I have a whole bookcase full of trades, but like most of my individual loose comics are at my parents' house. I haven't, earlier in the year, I was going back to the regular comic book store and buying loose comics, but financially I was just like, I can't, I need to get my finances in shape and boost my credit score, because this is going to sound crazy, but last year I read this guy's article about how all these things that were being used to prop up the stock market were basically illusions, and that as soon as these measures collapse, the entire country is going to be in a huge recession. And this guy's like, all we'll take is one unforeseen event, and every single thing they've been using to prop the stock market up the last 3 years will collapse like exactly like a house of cards. So he said, if you could get out of debt now, you should try to do it before the election. So I actually took that to heart because it made perfect sense. And I'm like, I got to pay off my credit card, I got to pay off all this. Hope somebody progressive gets elected that gets rid of student loan debt, and then I'll be set, because the economy is going to collapse. And then sure enough, 3 months or 4 months later, there's a pandemic loose, and what's happened? The market's absolutely tanking because it's all been smoke and mirrors basically to get it up to where it was. So that turned out to be a smart move. And I'm glad I followed my instincts.
Always got to go with that gut instinct, but you're right. These are uncertain times, as they say. It's hard times, baby. It's the American dream. I can't do a good Dusty. I wish I could.
That's because you're not a fan of Dusty. You have to love Dusty.
I love the American dream, baby. I miss that guy so much. Man, was he great. Man. But anything else you want to talk about here? Because it's been a really good conversation. Anything else you feel like we didn't cover?
No, I'm good. There's no shows happening for the foreseeable future.
I know. Unfortunately, I would be like, do you want to plug anything? Nothing?
No, I don't know. There's no NBA. I kept saying I was going to bring back my Cavs podcast. Now I think I'm just going to maybe. My friend did this thing where he did commentary on a game and did it on Facebook Live. I think I'm going to copy that and start doing those every couple of weeks. I don't know.
Time there. Website, link will be down below.
Yeah, chrisclem.net, because somebody cyber squatted on .com.
Okay. So yeah, before we hit that close button, that button here, anything else you want to say to the audience? Like I said, it was great to have you on. I look forward to doing this again. You're always welcome back on the channel here.
I had a great time at D Guys' birthday party.
Oh, it was the greatest. Let me tell you. That's all you need to know. Mum's the word.
Unforgettable night.
So, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'll do my little shtick here. So, thank you all for watching YouTube.com/DanielGuys412. Be sure to follow me at DanielGeyser412 on Twitter, DanielGeyser412 on Facebook, and be sure to follow Chris Clem, chrisclem.net. Links can be found down below in the description box. So until next time, guys, we are out. Have a great night. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Practice some social distancing. And kick the coronavirus's ass.